Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Edge of Analytics. My name is Maryann Werner, and today I'm sitting down with Miss Natalie Greenwood, who is our Director of Strategy over here at CCG. Today we're diving into some of the most commonly asked questions around data governance and data management. So if you're interested to learn more, then just keep on watching. So welcome, Natalie.
Thank you.
This is your first Edge of Analytics video, isn't it?
It is.
How exciting.
Yes.
So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Yep. So I run the strategy practice.
Okay.
So a lot of what my team focuses on is developing assessments and recommendations with output being a roadmap around data and analytics strategies, platform modernization, so that movement to the cloud, and then of course data governance. So I have a team that works specifically in data governance and supports data governance enablement.
Cool. So one of the most commonly, I want to hear your answer on this because it's some of the most commonly asked questions. Data management versus data governance. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. Some people think that there's a very distinct difference. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. So I understand the confusion. So from my perspective and our point of view in general, data governance is more about the policies and procedures and the workflows that support the management of the information.
Okay.
So data governance falls more on the business side, whereas data management is more of an IT function. It's actually the enablement of data governance through technology.
Okay. So what would trigger someone to initiate a data governance process or, start implementing data governance into their business?
Sure. So there's three key drivers for data governance. The first one is inactive. So you're not really doing anything with data governance, but you know that you need to be.
Okay.
And maybe you have everyone's doing data governance. We'll start there. Everyone's doing something as it relates to data governance.
Okay.
Someone in some department has a data dictionary or has written down the different reports that they create on a regular basis, but it's not enterprise-wide. So the intent is to create an enterprise-wide data governance program. So if you're inactive, then that's certainly, there's an opportunity there to go enterprise-wide and get a data governance program in action. There's also reactive. So we have situations where clients are responding to a regulatory concern. So CCPA, GDPR are some of the key ones, especially in retail that we hear about, but also in the financial institutions. There's a lot of regulations and in healthcare. So as you can imagine, having your data managed and having policies and procedures around the usage of that is really important. So that's the more reactive. And then there's a proactive approach, which we love, is when clients reach out to us because they know they need it.
Right.
They may have portions of data governance happening, but they want an enterprise program, and they realize that data is an asset and it should be managed as such. So they reach out to us proactively to help them stand up a data governance committee or program.
So you mentioned that there's a difference between data governance and enterprise data governance. Could you dive into a little bit of that?
Yeah, so circling back, when I say that everyone's doing data governance, every organization has it, but they don't have an enterprise program. So to have an enterprise program, you need to have a governing body. You need to have a set of folks that are held accountable and responsible for the overall management of your information and data. So that is where enterprise data governance programs come into play, and that's the difference between just doing data governance and having a true program set up.
So what is the group that would set up a data governance program, or who is that governing body? What does that look like?
Sure. So every organization is different. So depending on your operating model, your org structure, your appetite for data governance, we may define that a little bit differently. But in general, the program is enabled through a committee or a council. So it's a group of people across the organization from all the different operational areas that have a seat at the table, that have a voice as it relates to the data strategy, and they have an equal vote as to what's going to be enabled as it relates to data governance and strategy. Okay.
So is that more of a business function? Is IT involved? What is kind of the makeup of the department?
That is a great question. I get this all the time. A lot of times data governance is driven by IT because they see the need for it. And quite frankly, if you work in IT, you get sick of being the bad guy. The data's bad, it's your fault, right? What we attempt to do with data governance is say, no, it's a business function. The business needs to own their data and information. They need to be responsible and accountable to it. And so the committee is mostly made up of business, but there is someone from IT that has a seat at the table as well.
Right.
Because in order to your point around data management, in order to actually enable any of this, you need IT involved. So they're there, they're listening, and they have a vote, but they're not the only vote, and it is very driven by the business side.
And you mentioned this a little bit before, but what does this committee do? What's a day in the life of someone on a DG committee?
Sure. Well, hopefully you have a data governance strategy and a roadmap.
Right.
So in the event that you don't, that would be the first thing that committee should do is identify what are the key things within the organization that you need to implement or enable in order to get your data under control. But generally, they're writing the policies and procedures. They're ensuring adherence to those. They're developing workflows to support different system development lifecycle patterns.
Okay.
They're overseeing and managing the overall data strategy in general. So they're very much an authoritative body, a decision-making body, but they're not as tactical. They're not necessarily doing the enabling or, the more work group type tasks to enable data governance.
Okay. So what would you say to someone who might think, I don't have the technology to back a data governance program,
Yeah, we get that a lot, actually. We have a lot of clients that ask us to come in and look for and help procure technology for data governance. And generally what I say is we're not going to lead with technology. Let's lead with policies, procedures, and workflows. Let's ensure that your organization is even ready for data governance before going out and procuring a potentially very expensive technology. So in lieu of having a technology, we use things like SharePoint, Excel, Microsoft Word. I mean, there's ways to document your different data elements without purchasing very expensive technology.
Oh, that's really good to hear. What would you say to someone who might be very intimidated by starting a data governance program or procedure? They hear, okay, maybe my data is very, not clean, or I know I was just hit by a security breach or something. I'm very intimidated. I know this is going to be a big project. What would you say to someone who's a little intimidated?
Yeah, no, that this is a very real thing because data governance is so complex. It spans your entire organization for its data. So it's anything from inception of the data to consumption to retention and disposition. So it is overwhelming. Where do you start? And what we recommend is following a methodology and framework. We have our own at CCG, but there's so many out there. There's DAMA, CMMI, if you're in healthcare, there's a HEMA. But it gives you a guide. It helps you determine where are the areas that you really need to focus on and then put those into your roadmap and start to take action on them. But I wouldn't start by, just digging into one specific area. I would look at the whole picture and determine what are our highest priorities and then do the deep dive into one area.
Could you go into some of the components of a data governance? You said before you had a framework.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that make up data governance, I guess?
Yeah, so we've, and I've, as a consultant, I've worked with all the different methodologies that are out there. We developed a framework that focuses on 5 key areas. The 5 key areas that we hear repeatedly around organizations that are the biggest challenges as it relates to data governance. So we focus on the program management component, which is what we were talking about around data governance committees and councils and the governing body. That's always the first part because you have to have that enabled in order to do anything
The people involved, right?
Yep, the organization of it. And then we look at metadata management. So that's, to your point, technology. What type of technology would you use to store and manage your metadata? We look at data architecture. So we want to understand what are your needs from an analytics perspective? How mature are you? How mature are you wanting to be? And how can we help you get there? So we're looking at standardization, best practices, your reporting and analytic maturity and appetite for additional maturity. We also look at data security and privacy. So regulatory, we're looking at your policies and procedures. We want to make sure that you have a retention and disposition plan in place and that your disaster recovery program's enabled because that all falls under data management, data governance. And then the last one is data quality, which is a big one. Obviously, that's actually one of the first things people say to us when they ask for data governance program is we have data quality issues, help us. So we can do that through the lens of data quality and ensuring that you have a program in place and that you're resolving the data quality issues at the root so they stay solved.
So what would you say to someone how would you get someone started? Where do you start?
So we start with a quick assessment. So we spend about 6 weeks with organizations. We call it an accelerator program. The whole intent, it's called Rapid DG. The whole intent is to get organizations stood up quickly. So we want to identify the right people that should be part of that governing committee and the governing body. And then we want to look at those 4 other areas, metadata management, data architecture, data quality, data security and privacy, and assess your organization's readiness for data governance and come up with a plan, a strategy.
Right. So that way you're not spending 18 months just spinning your wheels on what you think is assessments and all
'cause you
these different
could.
frameworks.
You
I bet.
could, and we have. I mean, I have. Using the DAMA framework, it's a great framework, but I literally spent almost a full year just assessing an organization to give them outputs that they ended up not even being ready to use because that we had waited so long to get them the final output. We don't want to do that.
And I've heard you use the word DG fatigue. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot of organizations have started and stopped data governance repeatedly. Yeah. And they're just sick of hearing about it. The folks that are trying to run it are sick of it. The organization in general just, I come in to talk about data governance and they roll their eyes. And I get it because it is hard to tackle, and because of that a lot have failed, repeatedly failed. So we call that DG fatigue.
So then what differentiates, what makes you get people excited and
I think
making sure that they do take it seriously and that they do implement something?
It's twofold. I think for us, just the speed around being able to assess and quickly come up with an actionable roadmap gets people excited. But also coming out of that 6 weeks, you have the governing body. You have the people identified that are going to run the program, and they have an action, like a map, a guide for how to run it. Right. So I think that's a big win in terms of like clients getting people excited about it again, knowing that it's not going to fail because they actually have a roadmap and they have people that are going to be held accountable to it.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Sounds like a lot goes in, but probably not as intimidating as people think.
Not at all.
So that's good to hear. All right. Well, thank you for sitting down with me.
Thank you, Maryann.
I got a couple good tidbits about data governance, and hopefully you guys could implement your program yourself. So if you want to learn more, we actually do have a solution page at ccganalytics.com/DG to, a couple other different content pieces around data quality and data management and data governance. So if you're interested, check that out. And thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Edge of Analytics. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.